Okay, today we're also going to be, this is another activity using a blur tool, a blur filter, excuse me, and a mask. So our objective is to blur this picture while keeping the car intact. You see this a lot in motor vehicle magazines, motorcycle magazines. Where it's kind of blurred, but then the picture, the subject, in which in this case will be the car, is perfectly sharp. There's a few ways of doing this, and one way of doing this is to create a duplicate layer, right, and drag it down, and let's rename this motion blur. So we're going to use a different kind of blur filter. And what we're going to do is I want you to first select the car, and you can use whatever kind of selection tool you like. And select the car. You don't have to select the shadow if you don't want to. Remember, Alt will shave off some of your selection. And if you want to, you can deselect the windows as well. You can. I'm going to hold down Alt and make sure that I take the windows off. So because we want this image to be blurred as well. So and something like that, and maybe I'll take part of the shadow off. And let's get okay, so I have the car selected, and it doesn't have to be perfect because it's going to be blurred anyway. But do it as close as you can, and I might just give some room right at the end as well. Now, instead of just going ahead and blurring it right now, what we're going to do is we're going to right click, select inverse. Now everything else is selected, and what you're going to do from here is you're going to click on the mask. And when you click on the mask, take a look what happens. It should look like a car. Okay, it means that you've masked out the car. And I'm going to click back on this picture right here, the same layer but on the picture, not the mask, and then I'm going to blur that layer. And so I'm going to go to blur, motion blur, and when you go to motion blur, you can see that you can change the angle, right? And we want it at the angle at 0. But if this is a player and is jumping, you might want to have it at a different angle. We want it at 0. And this is a pretty dramatic blur, but you know, it's the options out there. We're gonna just do something that's pretty subtle, something like that. And then you can hit the preview on and off, and then hit OK. And now you can see that it's blurred. The car's in focus. There's some blurring around the edges of the car, and that's okay. But by and large, the car is sharp, and you've created a motion blur. And the cool thing about this is that you have a mask attached to it, and you can always use your paintbrush, and you can cover it up or burn through it. So you can burn through this mask, right? If you wanted more of it in focus, right? And I'm burning through that, making it somewhat a little bit sharper around the edges. And you can do that as well. You can also cover it up as well, like so. So if you wanted to get rid of some of these, some of the blur, you can kind of see that the car is blurred a little bit too. You can mask that out on your mask. So that's motion blur and how to use the select inverse and mask tool as well. And just for good measure, let's go ahead and add an adjustment layer and go to brightness and contrast, and let's just lower the brightness and increase the contrast just to make it pop a little bit more. Okay, and that's a good review on the adjustment layer as well. So you can see the difference between what we just did and then between the blur and non-blur. All right.